Becca, Gretchen Chambers, Zelda Zulu. That's all I can see on my screen right now. It looks like Lori Sherman. Hope I didn't mess your name up. Just entered the room. I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. If you could just drop a line, give us city, state, country where you're from. Welcome to the Explicit Voice of America. This is not a regular Substack. It's not a regular news section, as you can see. We are not here to chase every headline like a dog chasing cars, right? We're here to ask what the headline is hiding, who benefits from the official explanation, and who got left standing outside the gates while everybody else called it normal. If you're here live, you're here early, if you're watching the replay, you're still in the room with me. I feel you. We're kindred spirits here. Tonight's title, or theme rather, is a line from Shaka Khan, the song you just heard. I believe what you said, though you tell me lies. And I can't think of a better frame for this show, because tonight we're talking about performance. We are talking about the soft voice that carries hard policy. We are talking about the smile that walks into the room at well after the damage has already been done. We're talking about VP Vance on the View. We're talking about how race entered the conversation, and the machinery, of course, immediately trying to escort it out. We're also going to talk a little bit about Epstein files, voting rights, Black history, immigration, the economy, that old American trick where the powerful tell you one number and hide the rest of the story. And yes, we are also talking about Byron Donalds over in Florida standing in front of a literacy sign with a word misspelled so badly the spelling bee had to call HR. So this is the board tonight. First, Black History Month, Shaka Khan, not nostalgia, legacy, all right? Second, JD Vance on the View. We're going to look at how he talks, what he hides, and why this man is suddenly trying to sound like the reasonable one in the room, the grown adult in the room. Third, we have Clay Kane and Reecie Waters. Don't know if you've ever heard of them. Their show on, it's called The Clay Kane Show on satellite radio. And Byron Donalds, Achievability. Reecie cussing the wallpaper off the room. And let me be clear, Reecie was not cursing. She was cussing. There is a difference. Cursing is profanity. Cussing is cultural punctuation with a moral thesis attached. All right. So let's start with the music here. Now, if you were here during the countdown, that music was not random. That was the lobby music for the mess we are about to walk into. The first song was Shaka Khan, I Feel For You. That record is one of those moments where Black music does what Black music always does. It breaks the walls down before the institutions even know the walls are missing. All right, you had Shaka, who already had a voice that could knock paint off a church basement wall. You had funk, pop, R&B, hip hop energy, and that unmistakable entrance. It was a record that told the future then, and then dared the radio to catch up. And then we had the track You Can Make the Story Right. That one matters right there because the whole show is about people trying to make the story right after they helped make the story wrong. JD Vance wants to make his story right. The administration wants to make his story right. Byron Donalds wants Florida to trust him with education while the sign in front of him is fighting for its life. But the question isn't whether you can make the story right. The question is who you hurt while you were telling the first line. Now, now that the music gave us a little bit of oxygen, let's honor the woman who gave us the doorway. All right, so this is Black Music Month. So before we get into the machinery here, I want to just want to take a minute with Shaka Khan. And I do mean a minute with this living legacy and not just the hits. Because Shaka, she's one of these artists people flatten into great voice. And that is true, but it's nowhere near enough. A great voice is a technical feat. Shaka's voice is cultural weather. And here her you hear with her you hear the church, the street, the stage, the body, the wound, the flirtation, the protests, the survival, and the joy. She can make a love song sound like a testimony and make a testimony sound like it has hips. Now I'm going to show you next this album cover right here. All right, it's not just a cover. All right. It's a time capsule. This is Black pop power standing at the door um, of the 80s, right? And saying, I'm not asking permission to cross over. I'm bringing the whole house with me. All right. That matters because, listen, every time Black artists expand American music, America tries to act like it was always ready for them. It was not. Okay. Black artists keep dragging the future into the room while the business side figures out how to invoice it. Okay, let's bring up the next. There we go. Look at young Shaka right here. Before the full mythology, before the legend gets polished, before the name became shorthand, you can already see the self-possession. This is what I love, about Shaka Khan here. Yeah, Shaka didn't look like she was waiting for permission to become Shaka Khan. She looked like she had already met the archetype and was just waiting for the world to catch up. And listen, when I say archetype, what am I saying? I mean it in the old psychological sense. Some people do not merely perform, okay? They carry an image larger than themselves. Then you get this, right? Jet Magazine, May 12th, 1977. This is why Black magazines matter. This is why Black archives matter because when mainstream media was busy exoticizing, minimizing, or misunderstanding Black artists, Black publications were documenting the whole person here. Okay. And it wasn't just the voice. All right. The controversy, the politics, the sexuality, the family, the style, the contradictions, the movement, the risk. Now, this next page. we're going to move into now this page here is pretty wild because it shows you how Shaka was already being read through the controversy, not just as a singer, but as a Black woman whose body, politics, marriage, words, and stage image were all being argued over by the public. And I'm just going to read a piece of this because it says something important about how Black women in public get turned into a battleground. Okay, let's go to the next. Let's ease on over into that next slide. There we go. When controversy doesn't come to Shaka Khan, the foxy featured singer with Rufus seems to find it anyway. Last year, when she traced her roots for Jet, she sparked off an avalanche of angry mail from readers who objected to her self description as Blackfoot Indian female singer. More recently, she offended Blacks who don't believe in the mixing when she married Richard Holland, who is Jewish, who you can see pictured in the photo over to the right. And most recently, while Rufus was maintaining a low file, hot rumors were circulating that she was leaving the group. Let's see. Shaka set the record straight on the group for Jet in New York. We went through some management changes, but basically we were busy getting our act together. The group presently consists of guitarist Tony Madden, bassist Bobby Watson, keyboard players Tevin Murphy and David Walensky, and drummer Rick Calhoun. What's more, Shaka is shedding the feather and leather look that turned on her male admirers for so long. She now parades on stage in form caressing belly dancer's attire, which she allows, which she designed herself. In fact, she designed all her stage wardrobe. Now, this is interesting right here. Growing up on Chicago's South Side during the turbulent 1960s, she was a close friend of slain Black Panther Party organizer Fred Hampton and became deeply involved in the movement, in quotes there. And even as her career as featured vocalist for Rufus continues its upward spiral, Shaka remains politically and socially aware. She has been a courtroom observer of the Hampton family's legal battle to get 47.7 million in damages from present and former law enforcers for their part in the 1969 Chicago police raid in which Hampton died. Okay, so this is 1977. Keep that in mind. And this really puts much of her music from that time in perspective, right? I'm every woman became this slogan of women's liberation. And also, I want to say this is why this belongs here before the news, because Um, the news wants us to treat politics, right? Like it begins in Congress. But Black memory knows better. All right. Um, Politics is in the stage costume. Politics is in who gets called erotic and who gets called elegant. Politics is in who gets to marry who without being treated like they betrayed the whole race. Politics is in who gets to talk about their ancestry without being punished by the audience. Politics is also in whether Fred Hampton gets remembered as a revolutionary or erased as a problem. And that begins right here with us tonight. Because listen, Shaka, she gave us the frame. I believe what you said, though you tell me lies. Now, let's talk about a man who walked into the View trying to make lies sound like character development. And, tonight's board here is simple. J.D. Vance walked into the View with a book and a smile, a conversion story, and a mission. The mission was not just to sell a book, all right? The mission was to soften the package. Listen, because Trump is Trump. Trump does not soften. Trump does not repent. Trump does not pretend to care if you believe him. Trump is the bulldozer. J.D. Vance now, he is the pamphlet they hand you after the bulldozer leaves. And that's why billionaires, that's why they need him. They need somebody who can carry the cruelty without looking like he enjoys it too much. They need somebody who can talk faith while defending policy. They need somebody who can say working class, specifically white working class, while financed by the people who have spent decades breaking the working class. They need somebody who can sit in a chair on daytime television and make the far right sound like a misunderstanding. So that's what we're watching tonight. So, but let me say before I hit pray or before I pray, yeah, we need some prayers. Before I hit play, I want to set the room. Right? Listen, JD Vance, he went on the View, and that alone is the story before anybody says a word, right? Because this is not his natural room. You know that. I know that. This is not a friendly podcast. This is not a safe MAGA conference stage. This is one of those white boy grievance pods where everybody nods. Like, I'm sorry, this is definitely not one of the, we're talking about the View here. Where everybody nods like they're auditioning for the same Booker. No, this is not that. This is a daytime television table with women who know how to ask a question or two. And listen, the thing about Vance is this. He ain't stupid. He's a Yale grad. He's very smart, he knows what he's doing. That's what makes him dangerous. He knows how to reframe. He knows how to soften. He knows how to take a hard policy and wrap it in a story about faith, family, class, and humility. So as we watch this, do not listen for the answer. Listen for the dodge. Listen for where he starts. Listen for what number he chooses. Listen for what history he refuses to name. Listen for what group he turns into a problem. And this is where the machinery lives. All right, go ahead and play the tape.
For 29 seasons, this show has invited thousands of guests with all kinds of diverse points of view. And we have been asking our next guest to join us for a while now. So we're glad that he's taken us up on the offer today. Please welcome author of the new book, Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance.
I'm surprised at how tall you are. He's very tall.
Well, if you only see somebody on TV, you just see their, in my case, giant head. So
We all
it hides how
have
tall I
giant
am.
heads,
That's right.
We are the table of big heads here.
So this is a
Alyssa-
show of MAGA Republicans, right? That's
Yeah,
what my
right,
media
yes.
team told me? Okay, good.
We'll find out. I think you have the first question, Alyssa.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us. Now, you came into office with clear momentum, but when I talk to my friends and family who supported you and the president and still support you and the president, one issue comes up time and time again, and it's the economy. Inflation's up, wages are down, gas prices are starting to drop at news of this Iran deal, which we will get to.
Sure.
What can you say to voters who trusted you to lower costs on day one, and will they be satisfied by November?
Well, I think that's ultimately up to the voters, right? I think voters have every right to expect as much as possible out of their elected representatives. We certainly know that we were elected on a number of mandates. One was to close the border, which I think we've done successfully, exceeded expectations there. Number two was to lower prices, and there's a lot of work to do, in large part because of what's happened over the last few months in the Middle East. But as you said, oil, which got up to $120 a barrel, now is at $80 a barrel. That's going to be reflected in lower fuel, lower food, lower energy prices. But there's a lot more work to do. The thing that I'm proudest about most, because as some of you may know, I grew up in one of these towns that was forgotten by the leaders in Washington of both parties, is that you're seeing, that's Middletown, Ohio. That's my hometown in southwestern Ohio. It was a proud steel town. I was raised by a grandfather who was a union steel worker, is that those jobs disappeared. Those factories closed down. The thing that I'm most excited about is you do see a large amount of capital investment coming into our country. Factories being built, construction jobs are way up, manufacturing jobs are starting to catch up. So there's a lot more work to do. I think that we're making progress, but ultimately we're going to make our pitch to the voters in November, and they're the ones who get to decide whether we've done a good job or not, and that's how they're going to vote.
Okay. So President Trump has called affordability a hoax. He said that, not me. He's pouring money into this ballroom of his.
Watch how he
and the
reframes
reflecting
this.
Pool. Oh, don't forget the Arch de Trompe, I call it, and a White House cage match. All these things. Why is he doing them when you just, everybody knows that Americans are struggling? What is he spending all this money for?
Well, I got to defend the president on the hoax point. What the president said is the idea that Republicans caused the affordability problem is a hoax. And I think that's true. If you go back to the Biden administration, inflation got up to 9% under the Biden administration, okay? Right now it's at 3.
Pause it right here. Pause right there. See, this is where they get cute with the language. He says inflation hit 9% under Biden. Now, is that a real, quote, peak? Yeah, it is. But that's not the whole story. The kick is that he says the peak, like it is the ending. Like, Biden walked, onto Air Force One, into the sunset with 9% inflation. No, inflation hit that high point, but it didn't stay there. By the time Biden left office, inflation had come down to 3%. And that matters because if I tell you the house was on fire, but I leave out that the fire department came, the rain came, the damage was contained, and then I blame the next smell of smoke on the last tenant, I'm not explaining the house. I'm selling you fear. That's the move here. Tell the scary peak, hide the trend, then walk in like the rescue crew. And he keeps doing this thing where he says, we inherited a mess. That may sound humble, but politically it functions like a receipt shredder, because the question isn't whether Americans are struggling. They are, okay? The question is who made their struggle profitable? Who kept wages behind prices? Who lets corporations keep squeezing people, right? While politicians turn inflation into a bumper sticker. Also, ask yourself who gets blamed while the people with pricing power walk away clean? That is the story trying to sneak past us. Roll this video.
5%. By the way, too high. We're doing everything that we can to bring it back down to 2.5%, which is where most people would like to see it. But we inherited an affordability problem. We're doing a lot to make it better. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's a lot more work to do. But the president knows that a lot of Americans are struggling. In fact, he ran on that. He talked about it. And we've done some things and made some good progress on that point.
He just said he loves the inflation.
What he said, Anna, what he said is that he loves the fact that the inflation is going to come down when this war is over. That's what he said.
That's not what he said.
That wasn't a direct. Are you his interpreter or are you his vice president? Come on.
Well, look. What the president said. People were asking about the inflation. They were asking about the affordability problem, which again is very real. And what he said is, "I love the inflation because it's going to come down when the war is over." And now, again, we already see gas prices. Gas prices today, $4.06 a gallon, too high, but way down from where they were just a couple of weeks ago. So there's a lot, there's a lot we got to do, but I think that we're doing as much as we can. We're going to keep on working at it. And again, the American people are going to make their verdict, but I think that we have a very credible case to run on, that we brought a lot of new investment. We're building the factories. That is going to pay serious dividends for the American people over the long haul.
When?
Well, Joy, if you look at manufacturing jobs.
Yeah, okay.
Those jobs are increasing at a large number. Construction jobs are doing a little bit better. So what happens is the construction jobs to build the factories, and then the manufacturing workers go back to work. That also leads to rising wages. That's one of the things that I'm very proud of, is if you look at the amount that wages are going up now compared to, say, 2022, they're going up way faster. That's a good thing. You know, the affordability problem. Again, gas, way too high right now. Certain things way too high. You know, rents have been either flat or down for 12 months now. So there are things that are showing signs of life, things that are showing signs of progress. My view, I'm sure you guys don't agree with it, is that we inherited a mess and we're fixing it. But sometimes it takes a long time to fix a mess.
Sonny.
Okay. Mr. Vice President, according to a new report from the New York Times, you were the leading voice behind the scenes to release the Epstein files, and we applaud you for that. And you warned top officials, including top DOJ officials, at strategy meetings taking place inside the Situation Room. We understand that there are tapes of those meetings, that this was a huge problem for the base.
Okay, pause it right there. We understand there are tapes of those meetings. That's all you got to say about that? That is mind-blowing that someone in the Situation Room, right? Did I hear her say that correctly? This is what the reporting is alleging. Someone in the Situation Room has recordings of Trump making some very incriminating statements. Play the tape.
The report says you even floated having Tucker Carlson interview Ghislaine Maxwell to clear the president's name, but you were rebuffed by your people. Why?
Well, I'd say, first of all, don't
By your people, meaning Trump.
believe everything that you read in any newspaper, whether it's a right-leaning paper or a left-leaning paper, because as you guys know, well, there are things that are true, things that are false, and things that are totally missing context. Well, here's what I'll say. So, number one, I am frankly kind of a conspiracy theory on the Epstein stuff, and that story says that that's one of the things that's true, is that some people called me a conspiracy theory on the Epstein stuff.
Called you a conspiracy
and I love Susie, but absolutely, she thinks I'm a conspiracy theorist on the Epstein stuff, because I think that it's crazy that you had this guy who is clearly a sex predator who is hanging out with a lot of very wealthy and powerful people. Like, that really bothered me. I don't know what's there. Of course, nobody knows exactly what happened unless you were there, but that really bothered me, and I wanted to have full transparency. What I disagree with...
What did he just say? He wanted full transparency, and then goes and defends Trump. Look at this. This is the soft voice doing hard labor here. He says he is a conspiracy theorist on Epstein. He says he is bothered that Epstein was connected to wealthy and powerful people. Fine. Good. Everybody should be bothered by that. But then the conversation shifts from accountability to protecting Trump from the blast radius. That is the move. The question is supposed to be about power. Who was protected? Who was insulated? Who got access to children, wealth, parties, flights, favors, and silence? But the answer becomes my boss is being treated unfairly. No, y'all, that ain't transparency. That is reputation management. When the subject is elite sexual abuse and your first instinct is to clear the powerful man closest to you, you are not just answering a question, you are showing who the system is built to protect. And this is why people do not trust this Epstein story. And it's not because they're all a bunch of conspiracy theorists. People do not trust it because every time it gets near actual power, suddenly everybody becomes a legal scholar, a process expert, a privacy advocate, or a loyal employee. The victims, they get nothing. They get abstract. The powerful get names, lawyers, and careful language. That is the machinery right there, y'all. And let me go ahead and catch up with the people in the room here, the comments in the room. The room is hot. So let me go ahead and read some of the comments. I gotta scroll way up here. Diana Feather says that knucklehead is a weasel. They need another puppet, referring to JD Vance. He is not smart. He is sneaky and thinks people are stupid. We got a war, and he is promoting a book full of BS. Go ahead, Diana. Tell us what you really think, huh? She says that's a snake. And WTH, factories and manufacturing jobs? Really? Where? Good question. Where? Diana Feather, again, I can't watch him anymore. All right. Yeah. How do you think I feel having to watch this 20, 30 times as I'm editing it and putting it into the timeline here? See, transference conversation. Diana Feather, why don't you I just give you the mic? Let you do the work here. When a sneaky politician interjects a previous presidency admin, that tells you that they are not being truthful. David has jumped into the conversation. He says gaslighting is way, way up. Yep, gaslighting. Cindy, thank you for joining us in the room. I know we got a couple of YouTube or several YouTube viewers listening. I want you to just smash that like button, okay? Make this this channel spread far and wide. I'm not gonna you know they always say the algorithm, when you hit that button, everything goes into outer space, satellites gets bounced, aliens are looking at your YouTube channel. I'm being dramatic, but it's important. Please smash the like button, and that goes for my Substack audience as well. Smash that like button. All right. So go ahead and play the video.
is the idea that the White House wasn't committed to full transparency. We have to remember, like, I was inside the room when some of these decisions were made. The Epstein Files Transparency Act, the one that the president signed, the one that led to all these files that we're seeing, the emails. By the way, again, sorry, do I have to defend my boss? I know you guys don't always appreciate this, but, you know, one of the things you see in the Epstein emails is that Jeffrey Epstein hated Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump literally reported Jeffrey Epstein to the police. That's one of the things that came out of these files.
They were best friends for about a decade. And remember, he signed that Transparency Act under duress when some Republican women, congresswomen like Lauren Boebert, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, did not give in to his pressure of not signing. He brought Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room to pressure her into caving on not voting for that bill.
So let me respond to that. So
that's all true.
Let me respond to that. So number one is, yes, Donald Trump, and he said this, he knew Jeffrey Epstein back in the 1980s. He also threw Jeffrey Epstein out of his club when he found out he was a creep and reported him to the police. That's something that the media often misses when it reports this story. They tell the fact that they knew each other in the 80s, which the president himself admits. They ignore the fact that he narked on him to the police and led ultimately to JeffreyEpstein's downfall. To that point, Anna, you know the Republican Party. Well, it's one of the things that led to law enforcement investigation. But on the point that you made,
it was allegedly over a real estate deal that they got into a fight over.
But the email says
and
actually
they didn't just know each other. Let's just be truthful and transparent here. They didn't just know each other.
He's in a lot of
they were incredibly close friends.
He reported him to the police. That's what I'm saying. That is objective. That is objectively true. But Anna made another point that I think I would be if I may, because Anna made a very important point. This question about did Donald Trump release these files only under duress from Republicans? And Anna, you know the Republican Party probably better than I do. The idea that Donald Trump runs around afraid of Republican congressmen as opposed to the other way around is kind of crazy.
What was a bipartisan? It was Republicans and Democrats.
But because the Republicans control the House and the Senate, particularly the Senate, you need the Republican sign-off. What the president did is, look, I will say this. Again, I was in there in the meetings. He was very frustrated that the Democrats were making this about him when he's like, look, I threw the guy out of my club. I am the guy who reported him to the police, or one of the people who reported him to the police. The president was frustrated about that, absolutely. But he eventually came to say, you know what? Let's just get everything out there. Let's have this out in the public. And he actually called the senators. I was there. He called the senators and said, you know what? Pass this bill, I'll sign it, and that was it.
Well, then let me follow up briefly. Let me follow up briefly.
Yes.
It sounds like you believed that there would be men in the files who would be held accountable, rightfully so. And the American people are with you on this. Why haven't we seen?
Okay, I got to stop this and read this quote here by DM on the Substack chat. He says, pretty sure he called police after Epstein was arrested to say good job covering his tracks. Play the video.
The release of over 2.5 million additional Epstein file documents. It seems like you are someone that is on the right side of history on this.
So we have released, I think it's 6 million files or 6 million pages of documents. My understanding is the 2.5 million, Sonny, I'm going to check on this to make sure, but my understanding is that a lot of those are duplicates of things that have already been released.
So we're not
holding anything back. Some of those things are like the courts have to order you to release them. So that was one thing that we confronted. You talk about these situation room meetings is, you know, there was a big bunch of files that existed, I think in the Southern District of New York, or maybe it was some other jurisdiction, but we were like, we want to release these files, but you need the court approval in order to release the files. Sometimes we would apply to release the files and the courts would say no. So those particular documents, I would need to actually know exactly what you're talking about.
3.5 million documents were released, and my understanding is 2.5 million have not been released.
Those may have been the ones that are under court. So I don't know what the documents you're talking about, but I'm telling you,
let me go to break. Let me go to break.
Sure.
Let me go to break. Because people are looking at me, going.
And let's talk about the book. I'm here to sell books. Communion. Buy my book, please.
Eventually we will, but this is a good opportunity for us to get some clarity on stuff.
Great.
We'll be back with more with Vice President Joe Biden.
Stuff. See, DM, he says, he's got another comment here. He says, follow Ellie Leonard and Kate Justice for Epstein deep dives. PK says, yeah, which says to me that he knew about Epstein crimes and never said anything. Play the video.
We are back with Vice President J.D. Vance. Sarah, you got the question.
Yes, Mr. Vice President. In your new book, Communion, you write about your personal evolution with faith from evangelical to atheist to Catholic convert. And you also explain your evolution similarly on Trump, from calling him America's Hitler to America's best hope. Now, as someone who has admitted to chasing ambition, which you write about in the book, in the past, but now says your faith brought you back to your priorities, I have to kind of use your own words that sit with me from 2016.
Sure.
Fellow Christians, everyone is watching when we apologize for this man. Lord, help us. And I think about that all the time because as a fellow Christian, that is something that weighs on my heart as I watch this country and the leadership at the top, because it's also something I have to explain to my kids, which I know we also share, this idea that our greatest privilege and responsibility are these young people we're raising.
Of course.
So help me find the words to explain to my children what they're witnessing right now.
Well, you know, first of all, it's been well covered that I was a critic of Donald Trump back in 2015 and 2016. Now, obviously, I'm sitting here as the Vice President of the United States in the Trump administration. Well, Joy, a little humility, actually. I think that when you make predictions and those predictions turn out to be false, you got to ask yourself, well, what made me wrong about that? What did I not understand or not appreciate? For example, I said that Donald Trump's economic policies would not lead to wage growth. They did in the first term. That was actually a major, major thing. I said that we couldn't bring back any of those factory jobs because I kind of had given into this idea that those jobs were disappearing. But actually, Donald Trump, you saw a manufacturing boom during that administration. So there's a certain point. Let me just. So there's a certain point where you say, you know, I made predictions about this. I ended up being wrong. Yeah. And in politics and anything, I think it's important to just say, you know what? I got some things wrong, and I was wrong about him. He was a very successful president. It's one of the reasons why I've been so supportive of him.
But you go on in the book to explain that good policy was maybe one of your justifications. But the quote, and when you tweeted that or X'd it, was not about policy. It was what Christians were willing to excuse. And that's the part I can't get past. What are you willing to excuse in the name of power?
Well,
all right, that right there, that is the heart of the rebrand. He isn't saying I changed because I made a moral discovery. He is basically saying I changed because I decided my predictions were wrong. That is a very different thing. The question was about what Christians are willing to excuse. He moves it to policy outcomes. That's like an escape hatch right there. Because if the question is moral, he has to deal with character, cruelty, corruption, dehumanization, and the political idolatry of Trump. But if he turns the question into policy, then he can say, well, wages went up, factories came back, I was wrong. That sounds practical, but it dodges the spiritual charge. Because the question wasn't, did Trump have some policy wins you can point to? The question was, what did you train yourself to stop seeing so you could stand next to him? This is kind of like a psychological shadow moment right here, okay? The shadow is not just the thing you hate. Sometimes that dark shadow is the bargain you make and then pretend was growth. And Vance right there is trying to narrate ambition as humility. That is the performance right there. Play the video.
I would say fundamentally that one of the things I underappreciated about Donald Trump is that so many of the things that people said about him weren't actually true. Again, you talk about humility. Okay, so I see Donald Trump, I see a clip of him, or I see not even a clip of him, but reporting about something that he said, and I take it at face value. For example, let's just go back to one of the most controversial things Donald Trump said during the first term that I was wrong during the first campaign, is that I was led to believe by the stories. I read stories that said Donald Trump said that all Mexicans were rapists. He never said that. What he said is that the certain South American countries, Central American countries, were releasing criminals into our country, including Mexico. By the way, that was objectively true. So it's not so much Christians.
Fidel Castro did that in 1980 with the Mariel boat lift. There have been many journalists, including CNN, where you used to work and be my colleague, that have tried to find evidence of that. There is no evidence that Maduro was releasing people from insane asylums or jails like Fidel Castro did do. This was made up. And we just can't, accept it without pushing back.
Anna, we know that there were people who were released from prisons who were encouraged to come into the United States.
It wasn't the Mariel, Mr. Vice President. It wasn't where it was like a purposeful release, open up the jails, open up the insane asylums, and let people flood Florida. I lived through that in Miami.
If you go, it may not have been like Mariel, but if you go back to the caravans that were happening in 22, 23, we know that those things were funded. They were in some ways supported by the government.
There was absolutely.
So I don't know how you define support or not support, but if people are encouraged to come into our country after having spent time in prison by their own governments, I think that's a problem.
But, Vice President, can I just add one more thing? Because you do speak about immigration at length in this book.
Sure.
And I believe, as a Christian, I can tell my kids why it's important to have borders. I get that. There are laws, there are resources. I get all that things. It's much harder to explain when I see someone dragged out of a house or wrongly taken to a thing that isn't a violent criminal. It's a little more nuanced as a parent to try to say when someone's referred to as vermin or scum, when I teach them in school about people that have done that before, but this is different. It's very hard as a parent and a Christian to say both things.
And you actually say in the book, you talk about this, this struggle, this internal struggle in the book, and you talk about moral trade-offs that result in favoring a strict migration policy without dehumanizing anyone. But listen, over 50 people have died in ICE custody. There are thousands of children, 6,200, that are being held in places like Dilley Detention Center. The people that have visited those detention centers, I don't know if you have, talk about the subhuman, infrahuman conditions, the lack of clean water, the lack of medical attention, the lack of education. I would urge you as a Christian and as a father to visit those detention centers where the children are being held and make sure that the conditions are up to the values that we hold in this country.
So you guys have thrown a lot at me, and I see we got 30 seconds left here. But let me say, number one,
You're the Vice President. You can go long.
I'd like to pick up on this theme because I think it's really important. We do have to strike a balance, of course, between enforcing our laws. We don't want to dehumanize people. That is the balance that, look, law enforcement, what I'd say about this, law enforcement is always inherently not a very pretty process, especially when you're dealing.
Okay. That sentence right there. Look, I need to talk about this as somebody who spent 20 years in law enforcement. That sentence is doing too much work. Law enforcement is not always pretty. That could be true in the narrowest possible sense. Arrests can be messy, right? People resist. Scenes get chaotic. But that phrase can also become a tarp. It can cover cruelty, cover excess, cover policy choices. It can cover the difference between enforcing law and staging fear. The problem isn't that every enforcement action looks clean on camera, okay? The problem is when the government uses the inherent ugliness of enforcement to excuse the unnecessary ugliness of policy. Do not let them merge those two things, all right? That is where accountability disappears. If someone asks about children, detention, families, medical care conditions, and dehumanizing language, and the answer is law enforcement isn't always pretty, that is not an answer. That's a fog machine, all right? And the fog always shows up when the human beings start becoming visible. Play the video.
Sometimes with violent people, with people who are resisting arrest. Some of the people that I've been told by the media were completely peaceful, had never violated any laws. You actually look into the record and you find out that those people were actually being violent, or they did have a criminal record. They had a sex trafficking conviction.
Don't have criminal records. So the majority of people that ICE is rounding up and taking out of their homes from their families, they're separating families. They're using children as bait.
But
the majority are not criminal.
But can I respond to that, guys? Let me just say this. Okay. So you talk about the children. Here's what I'd say. Do we know that during the last administration, we had tens of thousands of children who were sex trafficked by the cartels, who were brought into our country in profoundly dangerous and predatory conditions.
Let's talk about this administration.
But here's the point. Unless you enforce the border, you invite that kind of conduct. You think that our immigration policies are inhumane based on the reporting of one person with a political bias. What I'm telling you is that it's inhumane to allow cartels to sex traffic people across our border.
And
by the way,
please hold on.
I appreciate that. We're going to get you back, Anna.
We're coming back with more with the Vice President, and I've got questions for you.
Great, thank you.
We are back with Vice President J.D. Vance. Sir, you come from a poor community.
Sure.
You know how hard it has been for people. Two things. You talk a lot about your Catholic faith, but the Catholic faith says we take in immigrants. We take in people who don't have or who are having a hard time. How do you justify both things?
So let me say first a couple things, Whoopi. So number one, the book is actually way less political than you might think if you were just watching this, because obviously we're getting into the issues of the day.
Right.
95% of the book is really not about politics. I kind of have to write about politics because I'm the vice president, but I want to answer your question.
Right.
So fundamentally, if you think about what is immigration enforcement, immigration is law enforcement. It's somebody who has broken a law. A law enforcement officer has to show up and enforce that law. Now, inherently, sometimes that process is not always going to be pretty if you capture a video clip of it, in the same way that if you arrest somebody for committing a violent or a nonviolent crime, sometimes it's not always pretty. What I'm saying is the Catholic faith is actually I think it strikes the right balance here. It says, the Christian faith, I think this is true of Protestants and Catholics, that you can have borders.
Yeah.
You're allowed to enforce your borders. That means the law enforcement piece of it. But you also have to take certain precautions and certain care, okay? And again, your argument is fundamentally, Whoopi, you're saying that we don't strike the right balance. I disagree with you about how we apply that, but nobody, hopefully, is saying we're not allowed to have a border.
No,
what I'm saying is that in order for us to actually enforce the law, you can't set a standard that says you're not allowed to deport anyone unless they've committed a violent crime. You've got to enforce the law equally and justly.
Let me do my follow-up.
You don't have to raise your hand,
Let me do my follow-up.
Yes, I do.
Because you were talking about people. What did black people do to this administration?
Oh, man, pause it right there. That is the question, right? That's my whole thumbnail right there. Race came up, not as a slogan, not as a panel topic, not as one of those sanitized corporate DEI words, all right? A black woman asked a direct question. What did black people do to this administration? And that's not a rhetorical flourish. That is a historical question as well. What did black people do that made this administration treat black history like contraband? What did black voters do that made districts have to be dismantled? What did black workers do that made their jobs disposable? What did black generals, black educators, black museum curators, black civil rights workers, black students, black mothers, black citizens, what did they do? Okay? And the answer from power is always some version of, what are you talking about? Right? What exactly are you talking about? That is the oldest trick in the book, y'all. Make the wound prove itself before you will acknowledge the bleeding. Play this video.
That has allowed it to really stigmatize folks of color. And you know how hard it is. You have folks of color in your family.
Sure.
So when you see, things, the Emmett Till stuff coming down, or them doing all kinds of removal of information of black heroes, how does that sit with you?
Well, what exactly are you talking about, Whoopi? Because you just
I'm talking
I know
about
Emmett Till was
I can tell you all the stuff. Yeah.
No, I want to know what she's.
You don't know what I'm talking
to your
about.
actual point.
So in a lot of the museums, there's so many. Where they're taking down the actual history that happened in this country. Slavery happened. All kinds of stuff happened. And it seems that it has been very easy for this administration to remove that and also to denigrate Black folks who have worked their behinds off to get this American dream. How do you, I mean, you know better.
So Sonny, that was actually a very helpful intervention, because I think the story you're talking about is where, allegedly the administration is holding back the appointments of people based on skin color.
I'm talking about a host of things. I'm talking about Black history getting erased
Don't
from
believe
public
your own
spaces.
eyes,
Black voter districts are being dismantled. Black leaders are being sidelined from our ranks. Where do Americans of color fit in this vision? Because it doesn't seem like we fit.
I think, Sonny, my view.
And if I may, since October of last year, there's been something like 6,668 refugees allowed into the country. All but 3 were white South Africans.
So first of all, I'm very skeptical of that number, because we have a lot of different immigration
Let's hear the
pathways in the United States
mansplaining.
of America. But let me just address Whoopi's point. Look, first of all, you asked the question, and maybe you don't believe this coming from me, but I think everybody is welcome in our political coalition. Frankly, even if you didn't vote for us, everybody is welcome in our country, so long as you're an American citizen with the duties and the legal obligations and rights to be here. But Whoopi, let me just give you an example of this. Okay, so you say that we're anti-minority or anti-Black.
No, I didn't say that. I asked. See?
Well, okay, fine. Fair.
Don't start any stuff
All
with
right,
me,
okay,
man.
all
Don't
right.
get me in trouble. Don't start no stuff with me. But
I misinterpreted your question, but let me answer your actual question there. What
I mean, the mansplaining in this room right now is thick. Let me catch up on some of the comments. Let's see. Who's this? Kate? Oh, by the way, thank you for joining us, Kate. Linda Benson, thank you for joining us. Who else we got here? Still trying to age gracefully. Thank you for joining us. Beautiful name. Let's go ahead and read some of the comments. Let's see. I just can't with this man. I am a lapsed Catholic, and he is not at all what I was taught. That's Kate right there. Kate again says, they hate diversity, and they hate diversity and believe that white men are the ones being discriminated against. He invalidates everyone to the best of his ability. Yes, behind closed doors. And a little bit out front too, but it seems like here he's trying to, not seems like, it is pretty obvious, he's trying to present a different face. He's trying to reform his image. Mary, thank you for entering the room. Let me go to the YouTube side. Dean Smith, I think you said VP JD Vance is outstanding in USA. So all diverse viewpoints are welcome here. I don't agree with you, but you're free to have your own opinions. And why don't you hit that like button for me? Hey, okay, play the tape.
What I'm saying, I think, okay, look at Washington, D.C. One of the most democratic and one of the blackest, by a share of population, blackest cities in the United States of America, has seen a radical decrease in violent crimes and sexual assaults and in murders. We have tried to take the crime issue seriously.
There it is right there. Pause the tape. A question about Black history, voting rights, Black leaders erase public memory, and where Americans of color fit in the vision. And his answer goes to crime in Washington, D.C. That ain't a mistake right there. That is a reflex. When Black citizenship gets raised, the old script reaches for criminality. not education. No, 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 no. Not history. No, no, no. Not labor, not voting rights, black veterans, not Reconstruction, not the 14th Amendment, not the museums, not the people who built this country without being allowed to own the fruits of their own labor, right? Crime. That is the machinery. That's the system right there. The question was, where do we fit? The answer was, let me talk about policing you. That is the whole story trying to just sneak past us. And that is why this platform, XVOA, Explicit Voice of America, exists. Because mainstream coverage will say tense exchange on race and leave it right there. The exchange was not just tense, all right? The exchange was revealed. The exchange revealed the operating system. So let's play the rest of this. I'm tired of it.
We believe everybody, whether you're black or white or rich or poor, deserves to live in a safe neighborhood.
Why does the crime? Where does the crime step in? This is not about crime. This is about
women lost their jobs.
Right. This is about human
Sonny,
rights.
What you're saying is we got to do more on the economy.
Black history has been erased from public spaces.
Black history is not erased from public spaces.
We do have to get to Iran when we get back. There's some very important news to
I'm telling you, we celebrate Black history. We celebrate all American history in this administration. You guys might be skeptical of this, but I promise you it's true.
I have to go to break. Anna, God, please, we have more with Vice President J.D. Vance when we come back. Don't do that. We're back with Vice President J.D. Vance. Joy has the next question.
Okay, so in the book, Mr. Vice President, you make a mea culpa of sorts for calling Democrats childless cat ladies.
Oh, man.
Okay?
My most boneheaded comment.
You say that in the book, that it was boneheaded, which it was.
Thank you.
What were you thinking when you said that?
So Joy said when we were off air that I'm fine, which I think is about the best endorsement that I'm going to get out of Joy Behar for a Republican. Thank you. I appreciate that. Graded on a curve here at The View. But, you know, I guess one of the things that I try to do, and I'm always, you know, all of us are always learning. You know, you said you were a lapsed Catholic. I'm a bad Catholic. I think all of us, that's why we need grace as Christians, is because we recognize that there are certain things we got to work on.
Right.
But here's what I'd say about that. So did that comment actually shed light on something and start a discussion, or did it just close people down? And when I make a comment that just closes people down, instead of trying to appreciate the point that I make, that's a mistake, right? And that's on me to do better.
Okay,
because can I just say, the point that
on.
I'd say on that, Joy, is I do think, in a very subtle, sometimes in a more profound way, I think our country has become more anti-family and more anti-child. It's harder to travel. It's harder to go to a restaurant.
Mr. Vice President, you know your grandchild is arriving.
No grandbabies yet.
Not yet. We're very excited for you and Usha, and we wanted to give you a view once.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for your time.
We will put this on. We'll send you guys a photo.
His new book, Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith, is available now. Scan the QR code on your screen to purchase a copy, and we will be right back.
So here's the verdict, y'all, on J.D. Vance on The View. He didn't walk into that room to tell the truth. He walked into that room to become acceptable. He's trying to get back into the good graces of independent voters because the donor class needs a next vehicle. Trump is the storm. Vance is the insurance policy. Same destination, cleaner shoes. And that is why we fact check the performance. Not because every line deserves a spreadsheet on air, but because the pattern matters. Peak without trend, faith without accountability, transparency without the victims, immigration without the human beings, Black citizenship answered with crime. That is not moderation right there. That is MAGA and a blazer trying to get invited back into the freaking brunch, all right? So let me take this time and reset the room. This is Explicit Voice of America. We aren't chasing the headlines. We are reading the machinery underneath them. If you're here live, you're here early. If you're watching the replay, you're still in the room. For those watching me on YouTube, don't hesitate to show some love and smash that like button. It costs you nothing, but it'll make a huge difference on my platform, right? Being that, this is a small channel on YouTube, all right? Hit that like button. You will blast me to the moon, okay? You go to a creator who's, got 10,000 subs, you hit the like button, they won't even feel it, all right? So tonight's frame is simple, okay? It was that Shaka Khan song, You Can Make the Story Right. I believe what you said, though you tell me lies. Listen, next up, we're going to bring in Clay Kane and Reecie Waters because sometimes polite television can take you so far before somebody has to start cussing incomplete sentences. And let's see, we're going to go ahead and play the next video. Go ahead, hit it. And listen, before this here is Byron Donalds. All right. I need to say this right here. I need laughter before my blood pressure starts filing paperwork against me. Byron Donalds right here. He's running for the governor of Florida. He appears at a literacy event, some Read to Succeed type event. And on the sign in front of him is the word achievability. And it's misspelled. Let's see if we can take a look at that. Can we zoom up on that? Now, listen, I get it. Mistakes happen. Everybody has had a typo. Everybody has sent a text and immediately wanted to snatch it back from out of the cloud. But when you are standing on a stage talking about literacy, reading children, education, achievement, and preparedness, and the sign in front of you cannot spell the word achievability, that ain't no typo. That's a scene. That is a skit with a podium. That is a SNL joke. That is the universe doing editorial work. And listen, here's why this matters. Republicans love to talk about literacy when they want to discipline Black communities. They love to talk about education when they want to shame Black parents. They love to talk about achievement gaps and without talking about funding gaps, poverty, housing, food insecurity, school segregation, or the political decisions that create the conditions they then blame on families. So when one of their chosen performers stands with a literacy sign out front that cannot survive spell check, I'm sorry. The desk is open, man. We're gonna we need some cussing right now. I need to hear somebody react with indignation and anger, because right now I'm just too tired. I'm too tired, man. Play the video.
The stage talking about Read to Succeed literacy program.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to hear a little bit of him giving this speech. And as he's giving this speech, and there's a little bit of commentary in this clip, I'm going to bring this up right now. There is a word spelled wrong. Achievability is spelled wrong as he is on the stage giving a Read to Succeed speech. Listen to this foolishness.
And being able to master reading is at the core of that.
So this is Byron Donalds, and he's running for governor of Florida. And Florida notoriously has students who can't read. And apparently they have politicians who can't either. Check the sign out again.
Read to Succeed. In the word achievability, Rep. Donalds, there is no E right before you get to the ability part. So you don't have the ability to spell achieve.
Look, listen. I just want everybody to breathe in the poetry of this mess right here. This man is standing in front of a literacy campaign, a literacy program, talking about reading, and the sign in front of him is losing a fight with the dictionary. That ain't read to succeed. That is read to survive. That is not achievability, right? That is achievement has entered witness protection. And the reason it's funny is because it is revealing. It reveals the confidence of people who think the brand is more important than the substance. The sign doesn't have to be right. The slogan doesn't have to make sense. The events, it doesn't have to have any sense of coherence. It only has to signal the performance. We care about education. We care about children. We care about achievement. But then the letters themselves, the writing itself, starts snitching on them.
You're someone in your team does not have that ability. And he went on this babble about literacy. And, you know, Republicans like to bring this up as far as literacy rates and black communities and black people. Well, here is your shiny tap dancing black Republican, tap dance until the heels bleed for the buttery biscuits. And achievability isn't even spelled right.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Kamala Harris would have been on a stage with a sign in front of her that was misspelled? Can you imagine if Barack Obama, if he was if he would have did this in 2008, this would have disqualified him completely.
Oh my God. Oh my, but that is the whole double standard right there. If Kamala Harris stood in front of a misspelled literacy sign, they would hold congressional hearings. If Barack Obama did that in 2008, cable news would have turned it into a character question, an intelligence question, an elitism question, a race question, a patriotism question, and a question about whether Harvard had failed America. But Byron Donalds, he gets treated like the chosen one because he is useful. That's the thing right there. Black Republicans are not held to a higher standard by the right. They are held up as props against the standard. The standard ain't excellence. The standard is usefulness. Can you say the things they once said by a black mouth? Can you attack black people from inside the frame? Can you make cruelty look diverse? That's the job right there. And as long as you do that job, apparently spelling is extra credit. Play the video.
This man is the leading GOP candidate, Byron Donalds. And you out here scratching and surviving to spell achievability. I mean, this man has a genuine shot of becoming governor of Florida because he is MAGA and he was co-signed by Donald Trump. He said, our kids need to be prepared to hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you can't spell achievability. And mind you, it might have been a mistake. That's fine. Fine, whatever. Folks, mistakes happen. But the way that Byron has been so critical of black people and black families and saying the black family was together during Jim Crow. When he couldn't marry his white wife under Jim Crow. And if you care that much about the black family, then why aren't you with the black woman? I don't care who's zooming who. I don't really care about that. But when you start policing black families, then we got to police your family, which is lacking achievability. Just foolishness. Prepared to hit the ground running. You ain't hitting the ground.
You ain't even at the ground yet.
And Reecie, maybe it was somebody slick on the staff. Maybe someone on the staff said, put that E in there.
I know exactly what happened. I know exactly
what happened, Reecie.
They Googled achievability to fact check it. And when you Google achievability, that's if you Google it wrong, right? Somebody thought that's how you spelled it, and they put it in a Google search, and you get results for achievability. It doesn't say, oh, did you mean achievability is spelled correctly? Achievability, as it's spelled there, is actually an organization in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But they probably didn't read that far down to understand that, yes, it's an organization in Philadelphia, but it's also not spelled correctly. So I can guarantee you that either that's what happened or they just dumb and didn't even bother to fact check. And, either way, it's a mistake. Also, just grammatically, the sentence doesn't even make sense. What are they? I don't get it. Read to succeed and then achievability. What is that? What the fuck? That doesn't even make sense as a sentence.
Oh boy, here we go.
Like succeed and achievability are saying essentially the same thing, more or less. It's just more of a word salad, which if people try to say Kamala had her word salad. It's like a word salad to me. But then they had the nerve. They got an underline, they got a bold, they got it red, and the shit is wrong. But I don't think Republicans have any shame. I don't think they have any shame. So yeah, it's a stupid ass word salad with misspellings. So the call is coming from inside the house. Okay.
Defending the Florida dream is what it also says. Defending the Florida dream. Dream on. Dream on. Yeah. And if I have this right, I got to double check this, but I believe that they haven't had any primary debates.
Oh, I can
because they just
that.
feel like he's the one. He's been chosen. And if I have this right, I believe Governor Ron DeSantis is annoyed by that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Reportedly. Yeah, here it is. DeSantis zings Florida GOP over lack of a governor primary debate. He's criticized top officials in the GOP of Florida after the party announced it was not holding a debate.
Well, he probably still has sour grapes because didn't Byron Donalds endorse Donald Trump over Ron DeSantis?
Probably.
So he probably still a little salty about this. Now
The party said it made its decision because Byron Donalds, who has been endorsed by Donald Trump but not DeSantis, was the only candidate to meet the internal qualification criteria. Other GOP candidates include Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins and former State House Rep Paul Renner. DeSantis said there should be a debate. They said there would be a debate. Having an open process and having people be able to have their say is always better than trying to engineer an outcome.
Nope, not going to happen. Decisions already been made by Trump. Listen, this is where this joke turns serious here because the misspelled sign is funny, all right? The political machinery behind it is not. Byron Donalds is not some random guy at a county fair. He is the leading MAGA-backed candidate in Florida. And the question Reecie raises is important here. How bad is the Republican bench in Florida that this man can glide through without having to really fight? Because look, the answer is it's not just about talent. It's about endorsement power. It's about Trump's hand on the scale. It's about party machinery clearing the lane. It's about a political class that talks about merit while engineering outcomes behind the curtain. They ain't asking who's most qualified. They are asking who's most useful to the brand. And Byron Donalds is useful, right? That's the system, right? That's the machinery. Go ahead, play the video.
The party should be doing is what's in the best interest of Republican voters.
They must have a really bad crop of whites down there that a black man with a lineup and a white wife who can't spell achievability is able to skate through the primaries with no debates. What do the whites do down there? This potentially will be the first black governor of Florida. He ain't got to even be qualified. He ain't got to spell. He ain't got to do shit. That's kind of nuts that it's not even a competition. You know, normally I'm pro-black like that, but I'm just trying to figure out what is going on with the whites down there in Florida. They couldn't even put up a fight against Byron Donalds. He's not exceptional. You know, he's just
no, he's not.
Okay. He's not even been a long-term Congress member. He doesn't have anything of any significance to put forward, like most.
But he's loyal to MAGA.
Be clear. Yeah.
He's loyal.
But
Reecie, I'm not good at predictions. You're better than me at predictions. He's going to win. The primary is already in his hands, and it appears that David Jolly is going to win the Democratic primary in Florida. Do you think that the people of Florida will elect Byron Donalds? I think we only had 5 black governors, and only 4 have been elected. Do you think Byron Donalds will be the next black governor in these United States? Or will they default to David Jolly?
You know, listen, I wrote the long and short of it. Guys.
Well, let me hear you in the chat. Does Byron Donalds have a chance in Florida?
To the 2022 midterms, and they had a former white male Republican turned Democrat. And what was his name? He was the governor, Charlie Christie.
Yep.
Charlie Christie.
Yeah.
Didn't work out. So that hasn't particularly been a winning formula in Florida so far. So I'm not bullish on that flipping. Stranger things have happened though. So I think absolutely him being black is going to be an issue, but it's still a very red state. So I don't know. I am almost retiring from the prediction business because I don't think that anything makes sense in Donald Trump's America. I just don't. Nothing makes sense. So I'm not going to make a prediction here. But what I will say is that if Democrats think that their great white hope candidate is a former Republican, never Trumper, I think they're going to have to come a little bit harder than that. But the polling, there's been some decent polling for David Jolly. But until I see polls up in the 50s, then to me, I'm going to default to whatever the status quo is, which for Florida is Republicans. There's every election cycle we have Democrats that poll at 46%, 47%. They're like, oh yeah, surging and it's competitive. And then guess what? They keep that 46%, and then the other 54% goes to.
DM says, hope not, because Florida needs a Democrat after DeSantis. Yes. Yeah, we need to get a Democrat up in there. I just don't see the pathway. TJ, thank you for joining us tonight.
In which, like with Herschel Walker, that Byron Donalds could incentivize black voters to come out and vote Democrat. Now, mind you, Herschel Walker was up against, Raphael Warnock.
Yes.
But there is a world, because, we don't like that. I don't use those terms, but we really have the issue with the Stephen from Django's, who that's who he's been called sometimes, right? So there is a world where which because he's going to make it into, as far as media, he's going to get a certain amount of black media attention in Florida, which if he says some crazy unhinged things, there is a world in which black voters might come out because they don't like him, where they might ignore a regular standard white Republican. There is a world, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Right.
Now, mind you, Byron Donalds is not Herschel Walker. He is not Mark Robinson. He doesn't have an abortion, a porn scandal behind him. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that. I think it's going to be a race. It's going to be a competition. But like I said, I don't know that him being black necessarily negates him being Republican in this case. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So JD Vance was on The View this morning. He has a book out. I don't know what it's called. And the women of The View, shout out to The View. I've been on the show before. They're amazing. The women of The View asked him a variety of questions, but Whoopi Goldberg and Sunny Hostin and Anna Navarro, who you've been on CNN with her before, Reecie.
Let me just warn you ahead of time here. This is where Reecie turns the stove on. And again, I want to say this before we play it. Reecie isn't reacting from pure emotion, okay? She is reading from research plus disgust. That is different. There's a kind of anger that is just noise. This is not that. This is anger with receipts. And I know some folks here cussing and think the argument gets less serious. No. Sometimes the cussing is the smoke from a serious fire. All right. Sometimes the language gets salty because the lie is so damn insulting. Right there, I said it. So listen to what she is saying underneath all of this heat. She is saying Vance is not moderating. All right. She's kind of warning us not to fall for that okie doke. She's saying he is performing. He is not becoming reasonable. He is becoming marketable. He's not softening because he's harmless. He's softening because the billionaires need a version of MAGA that can sit on The View and not scare the advertisers. Okay, play this thing.
They all collectively were questioning him about this administration's erasure of Black history. It's a bit long, and so we chopped it up because there's so much clapping in between. But Stephanie, play the first clip of Whoopi Goldberg kind of setting up the question. Play that first.
Black people do to this administration that has allowed it to really stigmatize folks of color. And you know how hard it is. You have family.
Sure.
So when you see, things, the Emmett Till stuff coming down, or them doing all kinds of removal of information of Black heroes, how does that sit with you?
Well, what exactly are you talking about, Whoopi? Because you just I know Emmett Till was the kid. No, I want to know what she's.
You don't know what I'm talking about.
Of things. I'm talking about Black history getting erased from public spaces. Black voter districts are being dismantled. Black leaders are being sidelined from our ranks. Where do Americans of color fit in this vision? Because it doesn't seem like we fit.
I think, Sonny, my view.
Okay, now let's play Anna Navarro, adding more to that, and then JD Vance's response. Listen to this.
And if I may, since October of last year, there's been something like 6,668 refugees allowed into the country. All but 3 were white South Africans.
So first of all, I'm very skeptical of that number because we have a lot of different immigration pathways in the United States of America. But let me just address Whoopi's point. Look, first of all, you asked the question, And maybe you don't believe this coming from me, but I think everybody is welcome in our political coalition. Frankly, even if you didn't vote for us, everybody is welcome in our country, so long as you're an American citizen with the duties and the legal obligations and rights to be here. But let me just give you an example of this. Okay, so you say that we're anti-minority or anti-black.
No, I didn't say that. I asked. See?
Well, okay, fine. Fair.
Don't start any stuff with me, man. Don't get me in trouble. Don't start no stuff with me. But
I misinterpreted your question, but let me answer your actual question there. What I'm saying, I think, okay, look at Washington, D.C. One of the most democratic and one of the blackest, by a share of population, blackest cities in the United States of America, has seen a radical decrease in violent crimes and sexual assaults and in murders. We have tried to take the crime issue seriously, in part because we believe everybody, whether you're black or white or rich or poor, deserves to live in a safe neighborhood.
Why does the crime? Where does the crime step in? This is not about crime. This is about
lost their jobs.
Right. This is about human
Sonny,
rights.
What you're saying is we got to do more on the economy.
Black history has been erased from public spaces.
Black history is not erased from public spaces.
We do have to get to Iran when we get back. Some very important news
I'm telling you, we celebrate Black history. We celebrate all American history in this administration. You guys might be skeptical of this, but I promise you it's true.
Terrible.
I'll let you go first, Reecie. I see you have some receipts that you're about to pull.
I wrote about JD Vance's bitch punk ass in my long and short of it to the 2020, long and short of a guide to the 2022 midterms. So I have the receipts. Okay. I'm not reacting to him from a place of emotion. I thoroughly researched him. And I've said this many times before. You can go back to interviews that I conducted about my book in 2022. And I said that he was the most vile candidate that I wrote about. Okay. And that's a high bar. I'm just going to read my long story short, just real quick. That's why I hate it. I'm not plugging the book because I'm not doing it again for this election cycle. But I said, Yale-educated venture capitalist JD Vance might be cosplaying a character straight out of his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, for his Senate campaign, or he might sincerely believe the outlandish conspiracies he constantly spews to rile up his supporters. Either way, Vance is running one of the most flagrantly vile campaigns of this cycle, and that is a high bar considering the slate of radical Republicans running. Vance reinventing his coastal multimillionaire San Francisco life as the anti-elite while getting bankrolled by tech billionaire Peter Thiel, who, by the way, has moved to Argentina, and the Mercers, is a remarkable and incredibly cynical feat. This was not ChatGPT, by the way. Okay. Vance has no real policy platform, so he just sits on Twitter and writes op-eds making shit up. If he creates enough Black, Latino, LGBTQ, and foreign boogeymen, perhaps nobody will notice his lack of substance. Since Vance has gone all in on the villain role, voters should hold him to account for his abortion opposition, disdain for women, promotion of bigotry, lack of seriousness in addressing healthcare, and resistance to civil rights. This man is a piece of shit. Fuck JD Vance. He's trying to soften his image up after he ran as a fucking goofy ass dude bro hillbilly for the Senate, kissed enough ass after flip-flopping off, after pretending to be outraged by Donald Trump. He compared him to Hitler, and now I guess he's Hitler's bitch because he's Donald Trump's right hand. But Donald Trump don't even want him nowhere near him because he's on the outskirts, okay? So now he's writing this book, trying to soften up his fucking image, talking about his conversion to Catholicism. We don't give a fuck, JD. You're still a scumbag. And the reason why he does not have the capacity to ingest what Whoopi and Sonny were saying, and the reason why he doesn't have the capacity to respond with any substance, because as I wrote in my book, he has no fucking substance. He's a fraud.
Okay. Woo. That is the word right there. Fraud. All right. And not fraud as in never tells a single true sentence. Fraud as in the identity is constructed for political use. Hillbilly when useful, Yale when useful. Working class when useful, venture backed when useful. Anti elite, while backed by elites. Faithful when useful. Cruel when safe. Humble when the camera is on. Okay? That is not evolution. That is costume management. And when Reecie says he has no substance, that is not just a roast. That is political diagnosis right there. Because when you do not have a real governing commitment to human beings, you fill the empty space with enemies. Black people, immigrants, women, LGBTQ people, professors, journalists, cities, museums, civil rights. Everything becomes a target because the target is the platform. Play the video.
He's a fraud. All he's doing is performing in each of these scenarios. But the core part of him is that he is racist. He's very racist. He thinks that the problem with medical racism is that the system is too good to Black people when Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth. He thought that the BLM and the protest for George Floyd was just an insurance scam for property damage. He thinks abortion is worse than slavery. So this man is a degenerate, virulent racist. And soften it up with how his wife said this or whatever the fuck, we ain't falling for it. Okay? This administration has been brazenly hostile to Black people specifically. And he could try to play the fucking nut roll or what you're talking about. Bitch, you know exactly what the fuck they're talking about. And if you don't know, then you aren't fit to sit on stage as the vice president of this shit United States under Donald Trump and even speak about anything. Go sit in a motherfucking library and read some of the shit that this funky ass administration is doing. But instead of being like Trump, who is a piece of shit, but he don't try to pretend to be anything other than a piece of shit. He'll tell you he don't give a fuck about your gas prices. He don't give a fuck about how much shit costs you. He don't give a fuck about the laws. He don't give a fuck about nothing. This motherfucker JD Vance will sit up there and try to act like he's the nice guy. He's not. Trust me. I've done the research to know that he's not. So he deflected and he tried to change the subject. We don't have to believe what they say. We got to look at what they're doing. And this dismantling of Black citizenship is intentional. It was in Project 2025. It is completely in line with JD Vance's convictions and his beliefs. 300,000 Black women, I heard Sonny mention that, and I guess Alyssa was trying to talk about more important things, but it's not more fucking important than goddamn Black women losing our jobs. The Black unemployment rate is almost double, if not double, the white unemployment rate. And that's a deliberate result of Donald Trump's and JD Vance's policies. So I'm not interested in rhetoric that you only spew, by the way, on The View. Go look at his fucking podcasts with the white boys and see if he sound like that. He don't sound nothing like that shit. So JD Vance is inauthentic. He's fake, phony. He has no substance. He has no qualifications. But what is real about him is his racism. You're not going to get him to admit it in that setting. But if you get him with Joe Rogan or you get him with whoever other fucking, Nick Fuentes, all them other motherfuckers, you will hear the JD Vance that I described in my book.
Okay, that is a lot to unpack right there. Listen, Vance tried to play confused. Like, what exactly are you talking about? But what Reecie here is saying, all right, if you get past the cussing, right? This is the part right here. You know exactly what they are talking about. When Black history is pulled from public spaces, you know, okay? When Black voter districts are attacked, you know. When black leaders are sidelined, you know. When civil rights language is treated like contamination, you know. When the administration treats diversity as a scandal, but you know, white grievance is patriotism, you know. So the question isn't whether Vance knows. The question is whether he thinks pretending not to know will buy him time. That is the performance, and that is why the view with Whoopi Goldberg there matters. Because listen, race came up and he tried to turn it into crime, safety, skepticism, and general welcome language. But the question wasn't, do you welcome everybody in theory? The question was, why does this administration keep acting like black citizenship is conditional? So listen, the moment somebody says, let's get to more important things, that is the moment you have to ask, more important to whom, right? That is the XVOA, explicit Voice of America question every time. Who gets to decide what counts as the economy? Who gets to decide what counts as harm? Who gets to decide which suffering is technical and which suffering is national news? So, see, do we actually have any more videos on the
For
on tap
29
here?
seasons, this show has invited.
Nah, let's go back.
Kissed enough ass after flip-flopping off, after pretending to be outraged by Donald Trump. He compared him to Hitler. And now I guess he's Hitler's bitch because he's Donald Trump's right hand. But Donald Trump don't even want him nowhere near him because he's on the outskirts. Okay. So now he's writing this book, trying to soften up his fucking image, talking about his conversion to Catholicism. We don't give a fuck, JD. You're still a scumbag. And the reason why he does not have the capacity to ingest what Whoopi and Sonny were saying, and the reason why he doesn't have the capacity to respond with any substance, because as I wrote in my book, he has no fucking substance. He's a fraud. He's a fraud. All he's doing is performing in each of these scenarios. But the core part of him is that he is racist. He's very racist. He thinks that the problem with medical racism is that the system is too good to Black people when Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth. He thought that the BLM and the protest for George Floyd was just an insurance scam for property damage. He thinks abortion is worse than slavery.
Okay, let me put a halt to all this. Let me reset the room and land this thing. Again, this is the explicit Voice of America. If you're here live, you were here early. If you're watching the replay, you're still in the room. Hey, if you're listening on YouTube, show a brother some love. Smash that like button. Subscribe also. Same with everyone on the Substack side. Smash that heart button. Show a brother some love. And I want to say my final goodbyes to, who is this? Jeffrey Nimhauser. Thank you for joining us. David Gardner, you've always got my back. Okay, thank you for the reminder. Juneteenth is Friday, y'all. We got Zelda Zulu. She had a comment. JD Vance doesn't know how it is. Okay. And we got 2 people on the YouTube side. PK Dare, I don't know if you're still in the room, but thank you for joining us. As well as Deanne Smith, I think. Yeah. Well, hey, Tonight, we started with Shaka Khan because music tells the truth before politics finishes lying. We moved through J.D. Vance on The View because power doesn't always enter the room yelling. Sometimes it enters the room smiling. Sometimes it enters with a book. Sometimes it enters quoting faith. Sometimes it enters saying, I was wrong before. When what it really means is I found a better costume. Now, then we went to Byron Donalds and Reecie Waters because the news is both dangerous and ridiculous. And XVOA has to be able to hold both at the same time. That's the work right there. Not panic, not spectacle, diagnosis. Okay. That is the stream. So if you're watching the replay later on, this week, next month, I don't care, next year, pull one clip from this and send it to somebody who still thinks the news is just information. It is not. The news is power talking in public, okay? And XVOA, Explicit Voice of America, is here to translate what power thought it could hide in plain sight. Subscribe to the XVOA publication at XPlisset.com. Hit that subscribe button on the YouTube side. That is how we keep this desk alive. And if, it also helps to keep the operating tools paid for, even a free subscription, because it helps the posts spread to those who are not yet subscribed and will become subscribers, eventually paying subscribers. All right. So we're here. The desk is open. The archive matters. Okay. The clips matter. The work matters. And as always, don't do it. Don't do it. You know what I'm talking about. Don't you do it. All right. Over and out. Good night. Thank you for joining us. You all get your rest. And what is this, Monday, Tuesday? Yeah, well, it's Wednesday. That's right. It's after midnight. Y'all get your rest. I will see you tomorrow.